Tonight, the unpaid carers facing impossible choices. Many fear they could lose their homes as the cost of living crisis continues.
I've got a mortgage, but it would come to the point where, well, it's time to sell the house, we need to go to the council, and where do you go for there?
Others will be forced to use food banks, also making the headlines. A row over legal aid payments, which could put domestic abuse victims at increased risk.
In sport, Ange Postecoglou says he's proud of his players as Celtic take a giant step towards winning the Premiership.
And the concert celebrating the key workers who kept us going during the pandemic. I'm Kellyanne Woodland in Edinburgh.
And I'm John Mackay in Glasgow. This is the STV News at 6.
Good evening. Unable to work and running out of options, exhausted unpaid carers have told STV News they fear they could lose their homes next as the cost of living crisis continues. With full-time caring responsibilities, they say it's impossible to take on extra work, and with fixed incomes, thousands of families are being driven into debt.
Charities are warning disabled people are being hit hardest by rising energy costs, with things like electric wheelchairs or oxygen machines requiring constant power. Here's our political reporter, Laura Alderman.
I've put in £110. Yeah, I'm down to £11.87.
Constantly counting every penny, Julianne would love to work more hours and bring home a bit of extra cash every month. But because she looks after her disabled daughter Kelsey full-time and she receives carer's allowance, her working hours are capped while her energy bills go up.
You live day to day, you didn't live week to week or month to month and plan. You can't plan anything, you've just got to live by the moment as such. You're kind of stuck because you need to be there. I need to be there 24/7 to look after Kelsey. But I didn't have any of the other additional things to go, right, well, if she goes to the day centre, I can go and work here, I can go and get some extra money coming in, because they then tie you, because you're only allowed to earn the £500. It would come to the point where, well, it's time to sell the house, we need to go to the council, and where do you go for there?
Jackie runs a vital respite centre for disabled children and their families from her home in Glenrothes. She needs to keep the house constantly warm, but rising energy costs cast an uncertain future.
Going to be a massive impact on us, whether we could remain open or close our doors. As a parent with a child or an adult with complex disabilities, the last thing you want to feel is a failure, because that's what will be happening for a lot of families, because they can't go out to work, they can't get this extra income.
Fiona took early retirement to help look after her husband Martin, who has advanced MS. He relies on an electric chair and bed, equipment that needs to be constantly charged.
We do see the bills increasing. Our energy bills have gone up by almost £80 a month.
Fuel was £288 a month, it's gone up to £350.
Of course, Martin, he feels the cold and he doesn't go anywhere, so our energy costs are higher, and I think that's the case for most disabled people who are confined to home.
Now charities are calling for more targeted funding.
We are storing up problems for the health service, so it's a false economy to say, well, we can't invest in targeted support for carers and disabled people, because you're going to spend it in the health service if you don't do that now.
The Scottish Government says it's working to establish a new carers assistance payment and have invested an additional £20 million for local carer support. But after the upheaval of COVID, unpaid carers and disabled people face yet another crisis and another set of impossible choices. Laura Alderman, STV News.
The prominent QC Gordon Jackson, who acted for Alex Salmond during his sex assault trial, has been found guilty of professional misconduct. The behaviour relates to discussing the case on a train. A video of his remarks, filmed by a passenger and obtained by the Sunday Times, forced his resignations as Dean of Faculty of Advocates. Well, our special correspondent is here. And Bernard, what can you tell us about this story?
Well, of course, in the aftermath of Alex Salmond's trial, where he was acquitted on all charges, Gordon Jackson was on a train between Edinburgh and Glasgow where he was filmed by another passenger. Now, among the many things which he says in this video, which was subsequently made public, Mr. Jackson trashes Mr. Salmond's reputation in this video, but more than that, and perhaps potentially more serious for a QC, he goes on to make a number of comments which have the capacity of blowing the anonymity of people during the course of these trials. He realised how serious it was. He referred himself for investigation. He resigned as the Dean of the Faculty of Advocates, and we know as a consequence of that investigation he has been found guilty of professional misconduct.
So what happens now?
Well, the Faculty of Advocates was saying today that they can confirm he's been found guilty of professional misconduct, but the process is actually ongoing, which would explain why when STV News spoke to Mr. Jackson today, he said that he's saying nothing. Now, I suppose it depends on what the sanction is, whether or not he decides that he's going to appeal this. What he has said in the past is that he bitterly regrets that the comments which he has made, because be in no doubt, Gordon Jackson is a very prominent QC. He's had a very long and really rather distinguished career at the Scottish Bar. This is a very big blemish on his reputation.
Bernard, thank you.
Now, campaigners say women who are victims of coercive control or psychological abuse could be put at increased danger as Scotland's defence solicitors prepare to boycott the cases. It's part of an ongoing row over how much legal aid lawyers are paid. The Scottish Government says the amount being asked for is unaffordable. Here's our senior reporter, Gordon Cree.
Vandalising the garden by burning words like thief and scum into her lawn, tampering with furniture to make it dangerous, and hiding raw fish in the house were all part of a catalogue of abusive behaviour against a former partner. The man responsible, 66-year-old Douglas Trotter from Giffnock, now has a criminal conviction. The Crown praised the courage of his victim for coming forward. But as of next week, a domestic abuse case like this, dealt with at what's called summary level by a sheriff without a jury, might not be able to go ahead because the accused will struggle to get legal representation. Solicitors say it's not financially viable for them to take the work on.
And the reason that we've identified Domestic Abuse Scotland Act Section 1 cases is because these tend to be more complex, more lengthy. They involve a great deal of preparation. They're paid under a fixed fee scheme which was set back in 1999, and it simply doesn't cover the scope of the work that is involved in these type of cases.
Criminal legal aid is a cornerstone of the whole justice system. The vast majority of people appearing in the dock accused of a crime are represented by a defence lawyer paid for through legal aid. And that means the type of cases being boycotted could now be facing significant delays. Scotland has pioneering legislation which made coercive and controlling behaviour and psychological abuse crimes. But there are fears if the boycott means women don't see their case come to court quickly, their lives could be at risk.
My concern is that the assumption was it's the less dangerous group of cases because there's not necessarily any physical assault involved. But actually the evidence is quite the contrary. We know that when coercive and controlling behaviours have been identified in a case, there's a much higher risk of lethality.
The lawyers say legal aid fees need to rise by 50%, something the Scottish Government shows little sign of agreeing to.
We did a 3% rise in 2019. We then went on to do a 5% rise in 2021. And I've just put through another 5% rise. And that actually just took effect in April. It went live on the 1st of April, so that's just this month.
Many in the legal profession feel if the wider issues aren't addressed soon, they'll struggle to recruit newly qualified defence solicitors, and that could make access to justice even harder. Gordon Cree, STV News, Edinburgh.
The Prime Minister has condemned claims that Labour's Angela Rayner tried to distract him in Parliament by crossing and uncrossing her legs as sexist tripe. The Mail on Sunday newspaper says the allegations were made by some anonymous Tory MPs.
Boris Johnson has promised to punish those responsible if they're identified. Well, let's go live now to our Westminster correspondent, Catherine Sampson. And Catherine, there's been a huge backlash against this story.
Yes, and look, the UK press regulator received over 5,500 complaints since that was published yesterday. Now, Angela Rayner is, of course, the Deputy Labour leader. She sometimes stands in for Sir Keir Starmer at the dispatch box. She's won some praise for some of her performances there, and she's saying these allegations that she's been, uncrossing her legs, trying to distract him, are simply perverted smears. She's won quite a lot of support from across the political spectrum, from female Tory MPs, from Sir Keir Starmer himself, and also from the First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, who says these sort of attacks feel depressingly familiar.
Well, fundamentally, men have to stop being misogynist, behaving in a misogynist way and expressing misogynist attitudes. It's got to change because this kind of behaviour has been with us for too long, and it puts women off coming into public life, and that harms everybody.
Well, earlier the Prime Minister strongly condemned the comments, which reportedly were made by unnamed Tory MPs.
I thought it was the most appalling load of a sexist, misogynist tripe, and I immediately got in touch with Angela, and we had a very friendly exchange. And if we ever find who is responsible for it, I don't know what we'll do with them, but they'll be the terrors of the earth. But it's totally intolerable, that kind of thing.
Well, of course, all this has reignited conversations about sexism in politics and the role the media can play. And the Speaker of the Commons, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, says he wants to have a meeting now with the editor of the Mail on Sunday to ask why that story was published.
All right, Catherine, from Westminster, thanks very much for that.
Russia is now into the third month of its invasion of Ukraine. Every day we see new pictures of the destruction the crisis has caused, and still there is no apparent end in sight to fighting that has killed thousands and uprooted more than 5 million people from their homes.
As the conflict continues, STV News has been speaking to some of those families who found refuge here in Scotland. Laura Piper has this report.
A small piece of home under the shadow of war. These sisters from Ukraine have been celebrating a traditional Easter. It's been 1 month since they left their family and fled to Scotland.
Early in the morning, our father called her and told her that wars is start.
It was like a better idea for me to get to our parents, for us to stay together. We didn't know what would happen.
When the conflict escalated, their parents decided the sisters should evacuate. They now stay with a host family in Edinburgh. Today, they found out their region has suffered further heavy shelling.
Every day we call our parents and they just say that they are okay.
The sisters' host family say they are delighted to provide them with a safe home.
I would like to think if something ever happened to us, that somebody would take care of mine if they were needed. These people didn't ask for a war. This is the 21st century. This should not be happening.
In March, Ken Stewart returned to his native Scotland with his Ukrainian wife, Tanya, their 3-year-old daughter and baby son. Kyiv had been his home for 15 years. They had to leave family behind.
Is it safe? We don't know. Plus, the whole area is surrounded by unexploded bombs, mines, grenades. In fact, the Russians left grenades in people's houses. It's another level. It's almost hard to imagine.
Ukraine is now entering its third month of conflict. There are those, however, who remain hopeful for its future.
I strongly believe that my country will win and we will rebuild our economy and start life from a new leaf, and everything will be okay. I really believe in this.
Laura Piper, STV News.
Other stories across Scotland, and the Glasgow Kilt Walk has raised more than £3 million for charity. The event saw 10,000 walkers earn £2 million for charities, with the Hunter Foundation providing a 50% top-up on every pound raised. The fundraising continues until the 4th of May.
700,000 Scottish households have still to fill out their census forms. The survey, which takes place every decade, is due to close on Sunday. Those who fail to complete it risk a fine of up to £1,000.
A Glasgow high-rise has been evacuated following a fire. The blaze broke out shortly after 11 o'clock on the 10th floor of the building on Fernbank Street in Springburn. One person has been treated for smoke inhalation.
And a rare cask of whisky that was forgotten about by its owner has sold for a record £1 million at auction. The Macallan 1988 was originally bought for £5,000 and was left in the distillery's warehouse for more than 3 decades. After the owner was reminded of its whereabouts, it was put up for sale and has now been snapped up by a private buyer from the United States. Now, wages in Scotland have fallen behind the rest of the UK, according to the STUC. The Scottish Trades Union Congress has found that the failure to keep pace with UK pay rises has cost the average council worker £4,000 since 2010.
Our political editor Colin Mackay is at the STUC's 125th annual meeting in Aberdeen, the first held in person since the beginning of the pandemic. And Colin, what have they been talking about today?
Well, you can see that banner behind me, boycott P&O. That's how the conference started today. STU President Pat Rafferty going a step further than that. After they sacked 800 staff and replaced them with cheaper workers, he said the bosses should be in the jail. Then they heard from First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, who had a warning for them in the cost of living crisis. She said that it was going to get worse. Tomorrow, this Congress will hear from Scottish Labour leader Anas Sarwar. He will claim that both Scottish and UK governments are failing Scottish workers. Now, in the midst of a cost of living crisis, these trade unions know that they really have to justify their membership fees to their members, and the Scottish Trade Union Congress General Secretary Ros Foyer says that they are doing just that.
Where workers are part of trade unions, they're actually getting about 5% on average better paying conditions than where they don't have collective bargaining and aren't part of trade unions. But you're absolutely right, the best way for workers to actually get a better pay deal is to come together in their union and bargain and negotiate from a position of collective power to do that.
Now, there are 550,000 trade union members right across Scotland, and the pressure is now on those unions to get them a good deal in the midst of the cost of living crisis. But there are staff shortages right across many sectors across the country. They think that gives them a chance to get them a better deal in negotiations, but they also know that those tough negotiations could mean an escalation in industrial action over the summer.
Colin in Aberdeen, thank you. Lost but not forgotten, the mystery of the ship that sank during the First World War has finally been solved. HMS Jason hit a German mine off the coast of Col with 24 sailors on board. Researchers knew its rough location, but now, 105 years later and 95 metres below the sea surface, the warship has been found. Polly Bartlett reports.
It's been lost at sea for more than a century. But this is the moment divers found the World War I battleship. HMS Jason sank off the Isle of Col in the Hebrides in 1917 after striking a German mine. The ship hasn't been seen since, but after years of research, the wreck has now been discovered.
So we saw the gun and a load of ammunition from it. One of the prop shafts and propeller on it. It's not just the ship, it's the crew that were some saved, some lost on it. So bottles and plates and soles of shoes and things like that. So yeah, pretty amazing thing to experience for being the third and fourth diver to ever see this wreck, since she sank in World War I.
The mission to find the lost warship's final resting place has been a challenge for all involved. Historians knew the ship's rough location, but it lay nearly 100 metres below the surface in freezing waters.
The wreck had actually sank alongside a great big rock. Now, we're talking almost 100 metres down below the surface of the sea, and as a consequence of that, it was almost hidden because you couldn't necessarily see the shape of the shipwreck. So it was very difficult to find. And though we knew there was a shipwreck there, on the sounder on the boat, it didn't actually show as such.
Now that HMS Jason has been found, the researchers' aim is to provide closure to the families of the 24 sailors who lost their lives. Steps will now be taken to make sure it becomes an official war grave. Polly Bartlett, STV News.
Those are the sport, and it's yourself. You've dried off a wee bit.
I have, John. For those viewers that didn't see me, I was doing the sport from Rugby Park on Friday, where the sprinklers went off, and I got absolutely soaked. But I just wanted to say, as I left the ground, the head groundsman said, "Thanks very much for the £5, John. I did a good job."
Get your fill of the action. STV Sport, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
John opened his wallet. Wow. Ange Postecoglou says he's proud of his players after Celtic took a giant step to being crowned champions. His side defeated Ross County 2-0 to restore their 6-point advantage at the top of the Premiership. Their next match is the visit of Rangers this weekend. With 4 games remaining, Celtic can be crowned champions against Hearts in their third last game of the season. Meanwhile, Scott Wright hopes his 2 goals against Motherwell earn him a start for the club's Europa League semi-final first leg against RB Leipzig on Thursday. Wright's goals helped Rangers to a 3-0 win. 3-1 win, that should be. Boxing and Scottish world champion Hannah Rankin says her lab rat preparations are building towards a monster performance next month. Rankin defends her belts at the Hydro in Glasgow on May the 13th, the first Scottish woman to headline at the huge venue. Here's Jimmy Borthwick.
She's into the final stretch of preparations before putting her world titles on the line. And Hannah Rankin is leaving no stone unturned in her quest to put on a show for her home crowd.
I've been doing a lot more work with Andrew Usher up at Abertay University. We've been working a lot on my performance aspects, so he's doing some groundbreaking research up there, talking about recovery and how you react in training and things. So lots of data, lots of sensors, Moxie sensors attached to me, inspiring earlier, and heart rate data as well. But I feel a bit like a lab rat, but actually it's all paying off and turning me into an absolute monster, so I'm very happy.
Rankin's defence of her super welterweight WBA and IBO belts was moved from Braehead Arena to the Hydro after huge demand for tickets.
An amazing response. It's been fantastic. You know, obviously it's great to make a little bit more history for Scotland. First female to headline at the Hydro. But I've had lots of really great response from people saying, "Oh, I'm bringing my daughter along to watch you," and that's something that I really want to be part of. You know, giving an opportunity to the next generation coming through, especially the girls in this sport. Because when I started out, there would never be the idea of like a world champion headlining at the Hydro. That's crazy. You know, that would never have happened. But now I'm changing that, and hopefully girls can see this as a route for them to take, and there's opportunities for them.
Hannah Rankin aims to continue blazing her trail when she faces Alejandra Ayala on Friday, May the 13th.
To rugby, and Glasgow Warriors have been dealt a blow with Scotland international Kyle Steyn set to miss the rest of the season. The winger will see a specialist tomorrow to confirm the extent of the Achilles injury he suffered in the loss to Stormers. Meanwhile, head coach Danny Wilson has issued a rallying cry to his squad as they look to bounce back against Bulls.
Out of these 2 games, we need points. There's no doubt about that. You know, I think it's so tight, so tight. The top 9 in the league. You know. So to go, we've been top 4 all season. To fade away would be really disappointing. Now we've got a challenge on our hands with a few injuries, but we've got Bulls away, Edinburgh away, 2 massive games where you said we need to take points.
Snooker news, and John Higgins is through to the quarterfinals of the World Championship. The 4-time champion defeated Thailand's Nopon Sengkam 13 frames to 7. He'll face Neil Robertson or Jack Lazowski next. Anthony McGill's last 16 match against Judd Trump resumes at 7 o'clock tonight. And finally, in ice hockey, after Glasgow Clans' season came to an end, head coach Malcolm Cameron says his season has been challenging but fun. His side lost 2-0 to Cardiff Devils to crash out of the playoffs. Malcolm says there is plenty to build on for next season. And that is all the sport for me tonight, folks.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sport, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
Philip is here with your weather.
A light drizzle is coming in from the west. TUI Blue Hotels sponsor STV weather.
Well, last week we had high pressure to the north of the UK, low pressure to the south. We were stuck in the middle with tightly packed isobars, so that gave us the strong winds, but also it was fairly settled with plenty of sunshine and dry conditions. This week we've got high pressure to the north. That's gradually sinking southwards. By Wednesday it will become centred across the UK, so another settled week to come, dry, but it doesn't necessarily mean wall-to-wall sunshine. There will still be a lot of cloud around. Back to just now, and as we head through this evening and overnight, we're already starting to pull in a lot of that cloud from the north. There will be some drizzly outbreaks of rain at times, mostly on higher ground and around the coasts. Further south and west is where we'll see the best of any drier or clearer conditions. So in some rural spots, we could see a touch of frost on higher ground. For most towns and cities, though, and where we've got that cloud, dropping to around 5 or 6 degrees Celsius. Now looking ahead to tomorrow, a slow start to the day, still a lot of cloud and 1 or 2 showers, but those will burn off by the afternoon. We will have some sunny spells. It will turn dry with variable amounts of cloud. We'll also feel quite chilly, temperatures reaching highs of 13 or 14 degrees Celsius. Now looking ahead to Wednesday, we've still got that high pressure centred across the UK, so another settled day to come. Still a lot of cloud around though, and still feeling quite cool, temperatures reaching highs of 11 or 12 degrees. Bye-bye.
TUI Blue Hotels sponsor STV weather.
And finally tonight at Glasgow's SSE Hydro, a concert is taking place celebrating the key workers who kept us going throughout the pandemic.
Virgin Radio's The Big Thank You Tour features performances from The Feeling, Isaac Stewart, the Fratellis and the Kaiser Chiefs, who Laura Boyd has joined backstage to find out more.
Well, Virgin Radio's The Big Thank You Tour is set to do just that. It's a big thank you to our frontline workers who have really kept us going over the past couple of years. Everyone from bus drivers to hospital staff have had their chance to get their hands on free tickets for this special show. And one of the bands set to perform is the Kaiser Chiefs. Ricky Wilson, hi. Welcome. Tell me about what people can see tonight.
What can they see tonight? They can see us. That's all I know. No, I've walked past some dressing rooms. We've got the Fratellis here, aren't they? Yes. The Feeling are here. We've got loads of acts tonight. It's going to be a good night out.
Is it nice to be able to give something back to these people who have kept us going?
It's not like we're climbing Everest or even sitting in a bath of baked beans. We're doing a gig. It's easy.
But you're going to make them smile.
No, I wouldn't say we were giving back. We're having a nice night out and hope everyone has a good time.
Now, we do have Scotch rockers, as you mentioned, the Fratellis. Yep. They've got a bit of an anthem in Chelsea Dagger. You're also no strangers to an anthem. Are we having an anthem off here? Can you outdo Scotland's own?
We're actually going on tour with the Fratellis in November, aren't we? Yeah, indeed, so tonight will be a good night to figure out what we're going to take on our rider, what kind of crisps they're like, what kind of beer they're into.
It's like a warm-up.
6 months before warm-up. So we'll be stocking up on Iron Brew and Tablet. God, I love Tablet.
Do you?
Why didn't no one tell me about Tablet before? It's like fudge, but better.
Bad for your teeth, though. You can do it, though.
I don't care.
Sugar rush.
It's worth it.
Brilliant. And can we see you in Scotland any other time before then?
Yes.
When?
I don't know. Not till November. I think we're playing in November again. I think back here in November, which would be great as well. Yeah. I think all the bands tonight, I'm just going to say, we're all playing quite short sets, so we're all going to be playing lots and lots of hits. It's going to be good. Like a teaser. Yeah, it's going to be good.
Like a teaser indeed. Well, guys, thank you very much. We can't wait to see it. I predict you're in for a treat if you're here tonight.
That was good.
See what I did?
Yeah, we saw what she did.
Just too talented, Laura, too talented.
Thanks for watching. Good night.
Bye-bye.